Good evening. Planning Board is now in session. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to thank Jenny for her service with us, her time as a town planner, and just wish her the best in her endeavors going forward. She's going to be greatly missed.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Mills.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little more, Jenny, it's been great working with you. Couldn't have worked out better. So it's been a pleasure. You'll be greatly missed, like I said, and hopefully our paths will cross again.
Mr. Jenks.
Jenny, sorry to see you going. Thank you. But I understand this is a good advancement for you. Wish you the best with it.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Thank you.
Mr. Stein.
Jennifer, I want to thank you for your help and patience during my appointment process when I was scared stiff of what I was embarking on and had no idea what I was doing, and you really took a lot of time to explain things and walk me through a huge learning curve. So thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck in your next step.
And
Just I know if Kathy was here, she'd be echoing the same things we were saying.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, she couldn't be here, but she thought very highly of you as well.
And as a professional, you can't find anyone better. The work that Jenny has done here for the Planning Department is unprecedented. The website, the town website for Planning Board materials was primitive, if not non-existent. It's now state-of-the-art, easy to find things quickly. All of the projects before the Planning Board for decades were in old drawings and files. All of that she managed to have digitized and cataloged so that we can go back to the beginning of zoning and find materials on the computer now that we would have to go through and look through boxes. And that's just scratching the surface of the things that she has done for the town of Southborough. And as my colleagues stated, she will be greatly missed, but she's not too far away. We know where to find her, and we will. Thank you, Jenny.
And I just want to say thank you very much. You've been an awesome, awesome board. You come very well prepared. I put little secret notes within what I write just to make sure that you're checking material, and I know that you are, especially Phil. And you've been great. So I've enjoyed my time here, and I hope I left it in a better place. And I think you're on to great things. So thank you very much.
And you are too. For those who don't know, the town planner has accepted a advanced position in the town of Lincoln. What's the title?
Director of Planning and Land Use.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion, Park Central 40B review. I'll ask the town planner to start off with that. Jenny.
Sure. So as you know, we received, just to go back on the history, the planning board had received a letter from the ZBA back in mid-November with a very large set of plans. Was the first time that we had ever seen it, or anyone in the town for that matter, asking for the board to review that and turn that around in 2.5 weeks. Board, recognizing how complex this project was, sent a letter immediately to the ZBA requesting additional time to give as much of a comprehensive review as they could, because the plans were not a complete 100% design. So at the 2 meetings in December, the board reviewed those plans, November 7th, I believe it was, and November 21st. I don't have my calendar in front of me. And during that time, we reviewed, and we had the applicant present, and so reviewed the project. We sent in comments on January 4th, and since then, we had a discussion at our last meeting that maybe we'll turn that over to Phil to update the board. I don't know if that's what they want to discuss tonight. I did receive a letter or an email this week from the ZBA chair requesting all emails that we've had regarding the letter that we sent January 4th, and I haven't sent any emails at all regarding our January 4th letter, and just provided documentation of what was provided to the planning board during those meetings. And in your packets for the December 21st, you did have the draft letter, which is what we reviewed with the applicant, and the board at that time instructed me to send a letter along with the edits and comments that we discussed, and I sent that letter on January 4th. So I just wanted to share that. That's really where we are to date. And in that letter, we indicated that the board would want to continue giving further comment as the review, peer review came in for the traffic study, as Fuss & O'Neill provided comments, as Conservation provided comments, and other boards and committees, because those hadn't come through yet. So I'll turn that over to you.
Can you just tell us it's my understanding that the plans are, I think at the last time the proponent was here, I thought they said it was the plans were 70% complete. We don't have a complete set of plans for review, is that correct?
When I last spoke to Fuss & O'Neill with the set of plans that this board had before you that you were reviewing, they were incomplete. They did not have drainage calculations. They were at maybe a 50%, 60%, so you have not seen 100% design yet, nor, as far as I know, has the MEPA filing been done either. So there is a lot more work, and I think you should still continue to review this and provide comments.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is because we don't want to give anyone the impression that the letter that we sent on January 4th is our final set of comments, because we don't have a final set of materials to comment on. And I believe at the last meeting that the proponent was here, it was stated that comments would be received throughout the month of January as the materials came in and as people continued to review them. So I think that the planning board needs to, know that and be prepared as these materials come in to start to look them over and continue to compile our comments. There's also a number of letters relative to the 40B from the neighbors, is that right?
That is correct, and I did read some of those letters at one of the, I think it was the 21st meeting, and then letters continued to come in, so there are additional letters that were received, and I don't know if anything since has been received, because I have to go into the ZBA department and request material as well as traffic studies. None of that gets given to the planning board, so.
Without you asking
Without me
for it.
asking for it. So I haven't been in a few days, so I don't know if anything new has come, or since the last meeting, last week. I don't know if anything new has come in.
Yeah, that's a source of frustration also, where we have to ask for it, even though we and the other boards were informed that as materials came in, it would be distributed. Mr. Jenks.
In that regard, I will remind the planning board that at a recent meeting, I requested that we get added to the distribution list of anything related to the site plan, the letters between Waterman, which is the developer's engineering firm, and the zoning board, and was told, no, the thing we should do is go to the zoning board and request the information as we needed it. I think it's unfortunate that they chose not to cooperate with such a easy thing to do. But that is what it is, and that's why Jennifer has been going to the zoning board to request copies.
Anyone else want to comment on the status of the 40B at this time? We good?
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Oh, when is, do you know when the next ZBA meeting is that has the 40B on the agenda?
It was supposed to be this Wednesday and was continued to the 20th. I do not know that time, but my understanding it's January 20th. And I believe the peer-reviewed traffic study would be reviewed at that time with the engineer. And that's all the information I have at this point.
Thank you.
Don, I have a quick question. The 7:10 agenda item, independent counsel, that pertains to Park Central, does it not?
Pertains, I think, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That was the only thing. Thanks.
So the next item on our agenda is a discussion of warrant articles. And the town planner has given us a spreadsheet here with a list of warrant articles, some of which are not under the planning board, but they're under the selectmen, but require our participation. So you want to take us down that
Sure.
list, Jenny?
Let me just grab it. So town council has reviewed all of the warrant articles and provided comment. So the articles that you have before you incorporate some of town council's comments. This has been, a letter has been sent to all of the departments, all of the boards and committees, Board of Selectmen, Advisory, Conservation, Historical, everyone. And you can see that letter there, directing them to the planning board website where you can find all of the warrant articles, the hearing notice. On the planning board website, I put a news and announcement. This is going to be publicized in the newspaper on 2 different dates, and the public hearing will be on February 8th, 2016, beginning at 7:30. And you'll have 3 articles that night that you'll be reviewing. The first one is going to be the as-of-right commercial large-scale ground-mounted solar energy system. And this is an as-of-right portion in order for the town to qualify as a green community. As you know, the Board of Selectmen voted for the town to move forward, trying to get that designation. And one of them is to adopt the stretch code, which is on for town meeting by the Board of Selectmen, and the other is to have an as-of-right. So I do have a draft zoning map here. A letter was sent out to all of those properties that we went over at the last meeting, just letting them know that we were considering them for, as an overlay, and that the public hearing would be held February 8th if they wanted to come and participate in that. Jesse has volunteered, I think, to present, and he's been given the PowerPoint presentation. It's very similar to what the one that you did last year, except instead of requiring a special permit, now it's as of right with a site plan review, but they still have to meet all of the same requirements that a special permit would. And that would be, through the building permit, through the building inspector. And then the other warrant article would be to amend the zoning map to have an overlay. And then the third article is the over 55, and that's to That is to correct language or remove the language that requires that the elderly housing be owned by a public or nonprofit. The court came back saying that's an invalid exercise of the town zoning authority, and that a town can regulate use, but it cannot regulate ownership. So that will be changed. And then other articles, if you look on the second page, the back of that hearing notice, we have William Caleri Lane, which is Reservoir View Estates. This was going to be on the warrant last year, but had to be pulled because the developer couldn't do the top coat. And at that time, we had walked the open space. Town council had reviewed all of the legal documents, and everything was in order. He has reviewed this again, and there's only one minor revision in the legal description of the road. The developer has to make this edit, and he's in the process of doing that. Otherwise, everything else is all set. I did want to let you know, the last meeting there was discussion about the one area that was a little triangle piece of 6 feet by 4 that the new owner had mowed. And I had sent a letter out last summer in July asking him not to mow it. Blueberry bushes were planted, leaf litter was scattered. I went out on the property Wednesday morning and I showed pictures to Don, and you should have that in your packet, color pictures that demonstrate it really is returning back to look like the woods. I mean, it's going to take time, but it's clearly has not been touched since July. And let me just see if I can pull that picture up. Here we go. I would have brought my...
Did open space go with you?
They did not. So I'm going to pass down this picture. This is the one in July. This is the picture that I took this Wednesday, and you can see the area. I think if you see it, it's easier. Do you have these in your packet? You should.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Okay.
We always have everything. So if there's no comments on the open space part of it, did you have more to discuss on that one?
No, I don't. So the next one is the open space for Kellam Farm. We discussed this at the last meeting. We had asked the developer to remove all of the farm debris. The developer did remove that farm debris last spring, early summer, and then we said we'd do a follow-up site visit in the fall once the leaves died back, and we'd make sure that everything was removed. Sometimes things are hidden under leaves. And when we did the site visit, it was Mimi, Freddie, Don, and myself. We saw a tire here and there, or I think one tire and some other fence posts. And then we had a follow-up meeting because OSPC had some concerns that there was a large mound that could potentially have been a farm dump. So at our meeting on, was it Friday? Friday, we met with town council, the town administrator, members from OSPC, Don and myself, to talk about some alternatives, whether it would go forward for the town to accept, or could we possibly carve out that piece of concern, or would there be another entity that would want to take on ownership of that open space. So after a discussion, we thought maybe we'd reach out to some of the nonprofits. OSPC thought that SULF and Trustees of Reservation and forgetting the other name, which Sudbury Valley Trustees, probably wouldn't be interested in such a piece. Usually they're interested in, farms or larger pieces and, interested in endowments. So I reached out to the Preservation Trust. That was one of them that we identified to see if they would be interested in holding it, and they said yes. At the same time, I heard back from Mr. Giblin, the developer, who indicated he'd prefer that it go to town meeting, let the town decide, and then if the town didn't want it, then let the trust take it. I have since had another conversation where Mr. Giblin called me yesterday and said he changed his mind, that he would prefer that he didn't want to go through what he went through at Barn Hollow, and would prefer to just have the trust, and was trust accept that open space, and that would start drafting language and send that to town council next week. So his feeling is to pull this warrant article. I communicated that with town council, and I communicated that with Mark Purple, and I wanted to let you know that that was what his feeling was when I spoke to him yesterday afternoon.
Phil?
How many square feet of land are involved?
The total open space is over 7 acres, so it's 7+ acres total.
The last, when you and I talked earlier this week after our meeting with town council and open space last Friday, we felt that because, or at least I felt that because the planning board, in its approval of that subdivision, one of the conditions of approval was that open space would then be turned over to the town. Now, the board doesn't have the authority to accept the land, but it would have been our job to bring a warrant article forward to have the town accept the land. So we'd have to get maybe a little guidance. First of all, the first thing I think we would need is, I know Mr. Giblin's out of town, would be something in writing from him, because you said in the last 2 or 3 days, he gave you one opinion and then he changed it. So we need it in writing. So you and I can maybe talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Because once he puts it in writing, then it's clear to everyone exactly what his intentions are. Now, if that's the case, we may need to, I'd have to look at the approval of that subdivision, but we may need to perform a modification to an approved subdivision that would change that item, that condition of approval from the town, putting it before the town for acceptance, to having it go straight to a nonprofit. It could just be a simple vote of the board, but it may also be a need to do a modification of an approved subdivision.
And I can look at that decision tomorrow just to see what the verbiage says, because it may be covered if it says town or other entity, but we'll find out what that is.
But it's good news that you found a taker of the land, and regardless of who owns the land, it will remain open space.
Right, and I mean, and there's a definite legal review that town council has to do. He has to look at the preservation trust and look at, make sure it's in good standing. Right now, the preservation trust is going to be, and when I get down to Pine Hill CR to talk about that, they will hold the land for Pine Hill, and a CR will be held by the Conservation Commission. So right now, town council has reviewed their standing as a nonprofit, et cetera, and it is legal. So again, it'd have to go through that same process.
Any more questions, comments on that one? Next one?
Okay. Next one is, well, green communities I did, over 55 I did. The next one is Fox Hill Drive. This one is part of Parkerville Heights, which is an older subdivision, and I didn't find out about requesting it to be accepted as a town road and accept until last Monday. So I spoke to Mark Purple, and Mark Purple was willing to put it on the warrant as long as the planning board felt comfortable that we would get all of the material. So we received most of it last week. We received large-scale plans today, and that has been sent to town council with a legal description to review. It's been sent to DPW for review, and to Fuss and O'Neill. The other thing that we haven't looked at yet is whether there's an open space component of that. And I don't know, Mimi, if you know that. Okay, so,
It's mostly easements on private property, but I think there's like a piece of. Is it on? Yes. Mimi Luttrell, Open Space Preservation Commission. I believe that there is an open space component to that. It's mostly, from my memory, which may not be very good, but I think it's mostly easements on private property. But I think there's a piece out front that may have the drainage in it.
Detention basin.
okay, so we'll have to look at that. And again, since it was so last minute, we've been just trying to gather the information, the plans and everything, so we'll make sure we take a look at that. And,
I think the way that one should be left is that Hillary and I will take a look at that.
thank you.
Or Hillary and a volunteer from the board will look at that. I'm willing to do it, but I don't want to put that on Jenny at this time. And the next one?
That is all.
That's it.
Just if we can go back to the over 55 piece for a second. First of all, not to launch a huge discussion on this, but I just want to mention that removal of that nonprofit requirement does sort of change the character of the bylaw in terms of affordability. And I think that's something that we should, consider moving forward on this. And I was reading the code in preparation, and something about this language, the total cumulative number of units approved under this section by the Zoning Board of Appeals since January 1998.
Oh, Jesse, sorry. That part the board is not bringing the
Right.
percentage increase.
But it's pertinent because we do have a calculation on our website. And the calculation is based on this language. And the way it's done, it accounts for 2 single families on one lot, that's 52, 2 families, 80, 3 families, 7, and then 4 apartment buildings. And I just want to, I wouldn't expect you at this juncture to be assuming this responsibility, but maybe something for your successor to.
I can explain this to you if you want me to, that part. So originally, there were going to be 2 bylaw changes. One, I was suggesting that the board consider raising the 7% requirement to 10%. At your last meeting, the board indicated they didn't want to work on that, to pull that. So that's not going forward. But I want to explain how that works. The other warrant article is a letter that came from town council requesting that the board change the nonprofit requirement because court came back and said that that is an invalid exercise of the town's zoning authority. So that's the only thing
Well,
that
the
is
court
changing.
came back in a pending case, right? I mean, that litigation is not resolved yet.
I don't know, but town council gave a legal opinion, which is in your packets, requesting that the board strike that
Right.
because the court came back and said that that is an illegal, an invalid exercise of the town zoning authority, and that a town can regulate the use but not the ownership of requiring that all over 55s that are done.
Right. And my point is that just simply striking that does change things.
It doesn't change the affordability because there's no affordable requirement for the units. And that
Well,
was
it
one
changes
of,
the character. I mean, the intent, the reason it was in there is to make it clearly and unquestionably not a capitalist free market enterprise to facilitate this housing. So by simply striking that, you've removed that component. of economic protection,
I think,
from my
I
perspective.
think town council's advising the planning board as a legal, so that you don't enter into a legal case of striking that. So if you don't want to take the advice of town council, that's on this planning board. That's all I can say. I did recommend in the planning board revising the over 55 elderly housing in the future to consider raising that cap, but also the town's population is aging. 2010 census data says, I forgot the number off the top of my head, it's 10%. By 2030, the aging is going to be 26%. The affordability requirements that the town has tried to do in the past by restricting it to Southborough residents hasn't necessarily worked. I gave those statistics in your past packets, and I recommended that in the future that the planning board considering requiring an affordable component to the over 55 bylaw. And you could do that as not mandatory, but make it as a density bonus for every one affordable unit. Give possibly 2 or 3 market rates. That would be my recommendation. I strongly encourage the planning board to work on that, looking at raising that cap and to look at requiring an affordability. And then that would, whatever your concern is, but I think what town council's coming back with is a recommendation of striking that nonprofit.
So all that aside, I was also referencing the current spreadsheet on our website now in terms of the calculation of the 7%
Right.
and the number of units.
Right, and so how you come up with that number is the assessors provide the number of single-family houses. They have to report that to the IRS every year, but there's certain codes that they use, so it's apartments within a single family get counted as one, but it also goes up to 4 families. There's a specific calculation, and I have that broken down in the chart, that comes from the assessor's office. Then you do 7% of that, and then that gives you what the allowed use is. And you can see that there's 11 point, I don't have it right in front of me, if you can look at that number, but it's 11.67? Is that correct? Is that
11.46.
It's since been revised because that was based on 2015. Now January calculations have come out, so there were 5 new houses and 3 demolitions, so it increased the number. So the calculation's a little bit higher now.
I mean, I would just request that the assessor provide, it's pretty straightforward that there's 2,835 single families, but for the 52, 80, 7, and 4, I'd like to see what they're basing that on.
It's a form that they submit to the IRS, so he's taking that information right from the form.
I guess I just want to see it.
Yeah, sure, and I can ask him that.
Okay.
You mean, have Hillary ask him that?
I will, right, because yes, that's correct. Sorry.
Could I speak to that?
Oh, yes, Mimi, sorry. Yep.
Mimi Luttrell, 19 Oregon Road, speaking for myself and not the Open Space Preservation Commission, on which I'm a member. I am one of the plaintiffs in the case referenced on the over 55, and I think it's premature to change the bylaw at this juncture because that case is still under appeal. That was the land court's decision, which we feel was a flawed decision, and it is under appeal. Additionally, that decision said the principle of zoning deals basically with use without regard to ownership or who may be the operator of that use, which makes me question whether you can have an over 55. Isn't that ownership? And the use doesn't change if you have a multifamily building with over 55 people or non-age restricted.
I think how town council explained it is you can't require who the owner of a property is. But you can say it can be a rental, it can be for sale, but you can't say it has to be a nonprofit or someone that is making a profit. That's an illegal or invalid exercise of the town's right. That's how town council explained it to me.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't seem right to me. I mean, we require deed restrictions and easements all the time for all sorts of reasons. So it's just not, to me, I would guess I need a little bit more explanation.
I'm not an attorney, and I'm just looking at the advice that the attorney is giving to the planning board. And my job as your town planner is to pass that along to you, and you can agree with it or not agree with it.
Was that it on the warrant articles?
That's it.
I want to thank you for doing such a great job of getting all those together. There was quite a bit of work involved in, especially that solar one, getting the GIS, had to reach out for that, had to reach out to the neighbors for those particular parcels. Had to write the articles.
Yes, it's been, and I did want to say one thing, that the building inspector is reviewing the solar bylaw and hasn't gotten back with his comments yet. But town council has, so.
All right. Anything else on that, or we'll move on? Next item on the agenda is independent counsel. I'll ask the town planner to, did you want to go first, Phil? Because I think, there's been some action, to the selectmen, but I'll let you.
Okay, let me bring everybody up to date as to why this is an agenda item. At the last meeting of the planning board, I made a motion that the planning board take whatever actions are appropriate to secure permission and funding to retain independent counsel to address some of the questions that the planning board has, particularly regarding the townhouse portion of the project at Park Central. My reason for doing that was, and is, that the selectmen, as I understand it, have asked town council to work closely with the zoning board. And I felt, and still do, that for us to ask town council for advice regarding issues that are basically involving things that the zoning board has done would be a unjust burden on town council, where he has given advice to the zoning board, and he has said that he's now attending all of their meetings. If there are questions relating to zoning board actions, I feel it would be a problem to ask town council in his present assignment to assist us with those issues. So I recommended that the planning board seek the permission. I don't even know who has to give that, and the funding to seek independent counsel that we can ask our questions of independently. So that's why this appears on the agenda, and Apparently, the request has been made of the selectmen. Is that who it goes to?
I spoke to Mark Purple about this, so the letter was addressed, or sent to Mark Purple, CC'd, but addressed to the Board of Selectmen. And Mark Purple, and I, in that discussion, said that there really is not funding available for the planning board. It has been drained, that budget. And I asked, my second question was he aware of any resources out there that could provide legal counsel through the state or whatever it might be, if there was not funding available? And he did not know of any. So the third thing that Don and I spoke to later on was, could we use the planning board's budget? You're not going to have a town planner for some time, and we haven't had an administrative assistant for 6 weeks. So there would be funding available through that. So you could use that. And I think that would be the recommendation, is to use the planning board's budget to hire counsel.
What are the available funds?
I don't have that number, but I can get that for you.
We received guidance from the town administrator that it is permissible to use the funds in our budget for that purpose. So, and we feel that we're going to have at least 4 to 6 weeks of salary not used in the gap between town planners. It could be more. We also have additional funds in there because the staff had been out sick, and those funds weren't used for salary. So it's my understanding that that the Board of Selectmen will take a vote as to whether or not to allow us to use those funds for special counsel, or to find other funds for special counsel. And they haven't met since we made the request, I think.
Right, the letter went out January 7th, so I don't think they've met to discuss this.
I'd be curious to know how it would be handled if our board got sued. Would they say, you don't have any funds to defend a suit, so roll over and play dead?
That's a very interesting question. I thought the same thing.
I can get into the reasons and the details of this, and I think that would not be inappropriate for another meeting. But I think it's important to say the planning board's interests are to do what the planning board is charged with doing by state law and by town regulation. And there are, I'm going to call them attempts because I haven't given up yet. There are attempts to prevent us from doing that. And it's in that regard that I think we need some advice. If either town council or the developers council could give us any legal authority for what the zoning board has done, I will be the first to say, bless you, let's move on.
Andrew?
Is it too late to ask for additional funding for next fiscal year?
No, to set your own line item for council?
Yeah, not necessarily for this specifically, but like Phil said, who knows if there's another thing down the line that this pops up. I mean, maybe we should have a line item that says for wherever there's conflicts with other departments or with the town council that we need our own.
You do have time. I've met both with Brian and Mark Purple once and presented the budget, and this board has approved the budget. But you haven't gone before advisory yet, and it hasn't been finalized by the Board of Selectmen, so that is something that you could discuss if this board felt that they needed to put that in as a line item.
So this discussion relative to independent counsel, as Phil said, is to receive independent guidance on the actions that have been taken on the, relative to the use variance and the 40A project at Park Central. And for the reasons that Phil stated, to go to an independent counsel. Now, if you, I guess, start talking about independent counsel and town council, and you've got two council, then what are the potential future steps? It gets resolved, it goes to court. So that would be, somebody may say that that would be pending litigation. And it's my understanding that pending litigation is a reason to go into executive session. Now, you'll notice that that hasn't been discussed. It hasn't even been proposed. That I believe the planning board wants to get this independent counsel's advice, and then based on that advice, try to work things out. I don't, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's our sincere desire to not have any litigation, not to go into that route, but to simply get advice relative to moving forward on the use variance and some of the language that's in there, and whether or not it's binding. And it has to do with the authority of the ZBA and the authority granted to the elected planning board. So, I think we've been pretty much left on our own relative to this, other than the help we've received from the town administrator. And so, do you feel that it's appropriate to start we have to define the role of the special counsel. If we are granted, authority to go and have the funds to go get special counsel, we have to be able to show that special counsel what we want done. So we have to define that role. And I think it's relatively, a relatively narrow set of items that are in that use variance that we feel are not appropriate or binding. So we need to define that. And then the other thing would be is do we have to discuss the names or the names of the firms of the council that we may be considering? Do we have to do that in public, or can we do that as an administrative item? I don't know the answer to that. And again, I think we've been left kind of on our own, so we need advice on how to go get advice. Any suggestions, gentlemen? We don't want to, we want to make sure that we act appropriately, but there's also a window of opportunity here, because this project is moving forward, and we do want to play the necessary role without crossing over beyond our jurisdiction, but we also want to make sure that our jurisdiction isn't drained away to someone else. Mr. Mills?
Is that something the town administrator can help us with?
I would suggest the town administrator, but you may also be able to ask that to town council on the process. But my first step would be the town administrator.
Yeah, I would be more inclined to start with the town administrator. I mean, I think we know how town council feels if we start, would be basically asking town
Right.
council for how do we,
Supersede.
yeah. how do we
Okay.
circumnavigate you.
Yep. Okay.
Might not go over very well. So,
Jesse?
Just through in my profession, I work with a number of real estate agents. One of them happens to be a resident in another community in Massachusetts, had a land use issue, and spoke very highly of her attorney, a man named Mark Bobrowski, who, as it happens, is, I believe, town council for Ashland, and is one of the foremost experts in legal matters and land use in the state of Massachusetts. So I went ahead and gave him a call, and he said he'd be willing to come to one of our planning board meetings to discuss this, and he might be able to give some just informal, I don't know, comments, if you will, on some of the questions and concerns you just raised, Don. So just throwing it out there that he said if we send him the list of upcoming meetings, he would make time to come out.
He absolutely is an authority. My concern is that we need to formulate the questions that we want to ask. And in my mind right now, the questions, I think, involve more municipal law than property law. At least in my mind. But we need to do that before we consider who we would consult with. And I think the thing we need to get over first is, do we have the money, and do we need anybody's permission? Or as an elected board, is this something we can do?
Well, Phil, he is also an expert in municipal law, I might have mentioned. He's town council for Ashland, so I don't think that's the issue, but I do agree with your point that we need to do some more formulation before that. I would agree.
So I think your next steps are, number one, to talk to town council, to talk to the town administrator about the process of acquiring special counsel, and how the funding would be appropriated if you do need the Board of Selectmen permission, or if that's something you can just do. And then come up with your scope, and then figure out the attorney you'd like to work with.
I should have printed the emails that I got from the town administrator. Because one of them stated that we do have the authority to use the funds within our budget. There is apparently a budget item outside of the planning board budget for special counsel or for counsel, things that may come up during the year, and apparently some things have come up during the year, and the email does point to those things, or at least those departments that so-called drained that budget. But the email also stated that we do have the authority to use our money, the money in our budget, if there's excess money, and we choose to do that. But I think there was a subsequent email that stated that it still needed to be okayed by a vote of the Board of Selectmen. That's interesting, that we're allowed to use our budget for that purpose, and yet we could be prevented from using our budget for that purpose by another elected board. But, I mean, these are short emails, and we're taking these steps to make sure that we move forward properly. So it might be appropriate to, at least in general, state those areas that we need, that we're requesting special counsel to advise us. And I believe one of those areas is in the use variance condition that states that the zoning board of appeals will have site plan approval. That was one of the conditions. And the planning board has stated since last summer that we feel that that is not and never was a valid condition. Am I right with that? Is that one of the items that we want clarified?
That is one, and there's an adjacent piece to that, because the zoning board, as a condition of the use variance, said that the planning board will have a residual site plan approval of, and it listed things like parking, sidewalks, landscaping, so forth. The question is, in that regard, is there any authority in state law? There clearly is not in our local zoning, but is there any authority in state law for the zoning board to take control of site plan review, which is, in Southborough anyway, specifically a responsibility of the planning board? And that's one of the things I feel is a vast overreaching of the zoning board's authority. And again, let me just say, at least speaking for myself, my goal has nothing to do with the acceptance or rejection of the project. It has to do with the planning board has the responsibility. The authority should not be taken away for the things that were determined by at least 2/3 of the voters at a town meeting to be the responsibility and obligation of the planning board. 5 members of the zoning board should not, I think, I haven't found any law that says they can take that away from the planning board. I think the zoning board has absolute and clear authority under the 40B project, and we know very clearly that our role, if any, on that project is advisory. It's to make comments. And the attempts of the zoning board to apply 40B rules to the townhouse project, which is not a 40B project, in my mind, that's overreaching of the planning board. Having said that, I'm not an expert on that. There may be something in the 40B regulations that say that if there's an adjoining project and it's being done at the same time by the same developer, then the zoning board can say, we're going to control that as we do the affordable housing project. I can't imagine that it says that in the regulations, but I don't know that. And that's why I'm saying we need the advice of somebody who knows that and other things. Because in my own mind, my goal is to have the zoning board regulate what they are responsible for regulating, and have the planning board regulate what it is responsible for, and not to mess up the two.
So that's really the primary item that we would ask the special counsel to advise us on. There are other elements of that use variance that waived requirements in our zoning code relative to multi-unit family projects, residential projects. Is that an item that we want special counsel to look at, which is the waiving of requirements in our zoning?
I'll give you my personal feeling about that. The requirements of the major residential development regulations, I would not be upset if those were waived. But it should be the planning board that waives them, because they are planning board regulations. And if the developer can't meet those requirements and presents the right case saying, look, this is a project that has great benefits for the town, the two projects together, and I know they're, on paper anyway, two separate projects, but they're really all one impact in the town. I don't know that I personally would be opposed to waiving at least parts of the major residential development
Phil, I wanna
regulations.
we want to make sure that we don't get into the details of the project. It's more the action of the ZBA to waive things, whether it's within their authority or not.
Yeah, you're correct.
The merits of those, we can either comment on or have the authority to take actions on. But is that another item that we would want special counsel to look at? The waiving of certain zoning requirements, which is what's happened within that use variance.
Yes, my opinion is everything that the zoning board did in that use variance that was overreaching of its powers should be looked at.
I think that's very well stated as to defining the task. And now, that's not to say, I mean, we're not, I don't think any of us are on a fishing trip here. There's some specific things that we want cleared up, and we just talked about them. But as we know, in looking into some specific things, it may cause a discussion or council to drift into areas that we have not discussed here in public tonight. So I think we're informing the public that that could happen, but the two main areas that is causing the planning board to request and seek special counsel are the two items that we just discussed. Is there anything else, gentlemen? So it was stated a few minutes ago that the next step would be to speak with the town administrator about the process of getting the special counsel as far as how to select, make that selection. If, we want to be ready, we don't want to be figuring this out after, hopefully, the board gets the green light to use funds and get the special counsel. So we can be doing this type of work ahead of time before the selectmen take a look at it. So what I would suggest is that the planning board pick 2 people to go and have that discussion, get guidance from the town administrator. Andrew's out the next 2 weeks, so that cuts it down to 3. I would suggest that Mr. Jenks be one of those people.
I'd second
Jesse? No? I don't mind doing it, but if,
So what's our time frame? I'm extremely busy, and then I'm traveling next week myself.
I think we got our answer. Because what we would do is go see, make an appointment with the town administrator. Because when's the Board of Selectmen meet? Is it next Tuesday?
I don't know their schedule. It
Could be as soon as next Tuesday, so we'd want to, you know, have that discussion with the town administrator so that the town administrator can share that information with the Board of Selectmen, so that if they could make an informed decision if they feel that they need to take that vote. And then if they do need to take the vote, they would know what they're, essentially what they're voting, what process they're voting to give the green light to. So yeah, it should be sooner than later. So it'd be Phil and I? Is that good?
Just looking to see when the next meeting is. It's not on the calendar for the 19th.
All right, what we'll try to do, I mean, is work with those that have the knowledge and authority to get us to the point of getting proper guidance within the rules and within the funding. Any more on that one?
Nope.
The next item is something that we need to discuss reluctantly. Town planner vacancy. Tomorrow is Jenny's last day. She gave the planning board and the town administrator ample notice back in December. She's worked very hard over the last couple of weeks to leave no loose ends and to set the table for a smooth transition from having a town planner, having no town planner for a short time, and then whoever the next town planner is, to move in and have an organized, hit the road running setup. So I'll just say what I know, and then you can fill, or whoever's involved can fill this in. The job description was advertised a couple weeks ago. The resumes, the cutoff date for getting submittal of the resumes was last Tuesday, 2 days ago.
I think they can still submit, but it was early consideration if you had it in by the 11th. Yeah.
And 2 members of the planning board are on that working group. And I'll turn it over to whoever wants to speak. Did you want to say anything more, Jenny, about the vacancy? No?
No, not unless you have specific questions.
Okay. Just tell the public, have we received any resumes, and is there any meeting scheduled to start to go over them, and what's the plan forward? Mr. Jenks?
We've received several resumes. We have a meeting tomorrow morning with the committee to discuss the resumes that we've received. From my own standpoint, I've gone through them all, and I have marked them either yes or no as to take the next step, whatever it is. It may be the interview, it may be more information. Unfortunately, the majority of them have probably not met our requirements for the job, but there are some in there that have a shining light. So we'll meet tomorrow morning, will be our first meeting. And
You said committee, but it's actually a working group?
it's a working, well, I don't care what you call it, it's a working group. It's Jesse and myself for the planning board, Paul Semino, Vanessa, and Karen from the DPW.
Excellent. And I think 3 of those 5 were on the previous working group. Mr. Semino, Karen, and Vanessa. Almost 3 years ago. Anything more on that? Mr. Stein?
Yeah, and just as far as why we're doing it in a working group instead, did you want to speak to that, Don?
Yeah, I did. I forgot to bring that.
As opposed to
The email, right? There was an email that that Vanessa sent to me, and Mark Purple and a few others, even I think Aldo was, maybe not Aldo, but it was confirming the advice from a labor council who, I think he's labor council, who commented on the necessity for putting together this working group or a committee or a subcommittee or whatever you wanted to call it, and have it perform this function either under the open meeting law or if it was not covered by that. And the advice in writing that we received was that it is not subject to the open meeting law, and therefore the working group, which we've described to the public, exists, and their methods and their progress to date. But the advice that we received was clear relative to complying with the open meeting law, and this type of a working group is not covered by that law. So you can proceed with your meeting without posting it. And is it open to the public? Where's the meeting?
DPW. I don't believe it was
I think you're right. It's a working group. Okay. Any more on that? Next item on the agenda is the update St. Mark's Solar Project. I'll ask the town planner to give us that update.
Sure, and we do have one other item that will be under the planner's report, but just quickly about St. Mark's Solar Project. We had met the department heads last week informally with St. Mark's, and they have filed an application with the planning board to install solar, and it will be a major site plan review. They are not going to be submitting a request for a special permit for the solar or special permit for the lower impact development. They're going to exercise their right of being exempt under, as a nonprofit. But they will submit everything as though they're applying for that, but they're not seeking that approval. They are on the agenda coming up for February 22nd. And that's all. But if you have any questions during the process, feel free to reach out. As you know, I've gone through permitting for a very large 5 megawatt under this bylaw when I was in Bolton, and it went through seamlessly. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
When you met, when St. Mark's met with the department heads, were there any neighbors there?
No, because it's an internal meeting, department head meeting.
And was there any, I guess, news or information from St. Mark's relative to the neighbors that you could share, or?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So they have had reached out to the neighbors and sent a letter. They hadn't had a second meeting. If you remember initially, they had a meeting with neighbors, and there was concern about where they were first proposing it, and they said they'd go back to the drawing board and move it as far into the property of St. Mark's and away from abutters as possible. They came up with a location. They sent that proposal to all of the abutters. I will tell you there is an appeal. So they did have to go before the ZBA for the ZBA to determine that this project falls under the exemption of them being a nonprofit. And an abutter has appealed the ZBA decision, or that decision. And they're still coming forward to the planning board for that. But that's the only news I have on that. I know that they have tried their best, is what they're saying, to move it as far away from any abutters, have reduced the size. They're willing to do whatever it is to keep the butters happy. They had done a balloon test. I suggested that they do another one and notify the abutters when they do that, so neighbors can see if they see that. They're willing to put up buffering if that helps. So they want to be a good neighbor.
Can you tell us what a balloon test is?
Sure. So a balloon test would show the height of the solar panels. So it's just demonstrating the height, and then someone could look out their window or wherever in the yard to see if they would see the balloons. This is a good time of year to do it because there's no leaves, or there's less leaves too. The other thing that they did talk about, that this solar generation would provide 25% of their electric power, and they're going to tie it in with their STEM building. So they're very excited about being able to use green energy.
Questions, comments? Mr. Jenks.
If the zoning board's approval under the Dover law is being challenged, should we be looking at this before we know the answer to that?
My understanding, because they're not appealing your decision, that is separate from the planning board's decision. But if you want legal counsel's opinion on that, they want to proceed forward.
I think it's more a time management thing. If
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time on this and then for some reason they don't get the zoning approval, we have spent a lot of time for nothing.
And I think St. Mark's probably debated that themselves and wanted to move forward with this. I think they feel confident that it falls under their the Dover Amendment.
So they're on our agenda late in February. Have they submitted anything?
Yes.
Has that information been shared with town council?
Not yet.
So maybe what we'll do is do that, is share that that St. Mark's wants to move forward, that that there is an appeal, and I guess, at least from my point of view, if St. Mark's is willing to move forward and we can manage it time-wise, that we should try to accommodate that unless we're advised not to for other reasons.
What's the,
What date?
February 22nd, you say?
what's the timeframe to decision the appeal?
February 22nd. Typically, they have 20 days within that to appeal, and they've exercised that right. How long an appeal takes? Could be years. Could be months. I'm going to go over under my planner's report about some of the projects that you're aware of that are coming down the pipeline. We've received a lot this week and expect a few more coming in, and I want you to be aware of that. But I do have one item that I want to talk about that I've been discussing with town council, and that's why the applicant is here in the audience, that I want to be able to talk to you about that tonight.
So are we done with St. Mark's Solar for now? Next item on the agenda is the planner's report, is that right?
Yes. So I have met, and I don't know if you want to come forward, and I had met with Attorney Jackowitz.
Yep.
A few weeks ago, and we talked about a project that probably Don was around, but he was probably 12 on the board then. It was a project that was approved, I believe, in the 1960s, 68, and it's called Runaway Hills, and you might know of one of the roads called Overlook Drive. That road was constructed, but the other road called Mainstone Road was never constructed due to site constraints. The board has always held a covenant on that road, and since that time there have been some lots that have been released. So when I first looked at this, I said, well, how, I questioned whether or not lots could be released from a covenant that's in place, that's being held for a development that hasn't been finished since the 1960s. So I sent this to town council, and we spoke today, and town council is reviewing this and feels that it might be simple and it might not, but he just wants to make sure that he's giving the planning board guidance. It might be that the planning board, and I asked, can the planning board vote to release this tonight? And he said they could, contingent on town council's recommendation. The recommendation may be to amend the covenant or to put specific language into the release, because these are non-buildable lots. There's not a road. There's no infrastructure. And my understanding of the two lots that they're requesting to be released are 32 and 33 because the adjacent owner of the lot wants to purchase them to preserve their scenic vista. So town council is saying there might have to be additional language that you have to put into this covenant release. But the original covenant may have to be, may have to be done with the original covenant. Again, it goes way back to 1968. So on that note, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Not much. Bob Jackowitz. I actually live in town, 7 Prentice Street. I represent the estate of Mara Dash. They bought the property in 1993. It was taxed as a separate lot. It's adjacent to where their home was. And when somebody bought it in 1985, a Mr. Backman, he bought it from the developer. But so we did a purchase and sale for the 2 lots, not knowing there was any problem. Get a call from the buyer's attorney saying there's a title defect here. There's some covenant that goes way back. See if you can find a release. As far as I know, no release was ever obtained from the first 2 sales. I obviously can't ask my client. She's no longer with us, and they're not if they're, were ever recorded, they're not indexed, so they've disappeared. I'm assuming there was just never a lot release for those two lots, so here we are, we've continued the closing a couple of times. I basically said, okay, I can see what it says. I just prepared a document that would release the lot from the covenant, and basically submitted it to the board. Haven't heard from town council. I don't disagree with anything you just heard about that. So what we're trying to do is figure out when we could have a closing, and if we can have a closing, what the process would be to obtain the, whatever town council tells the board is appropriate for the release. It would just straighten out the title. We could complete the sale.
And I relayed that information that there's a closing pending, and I didn't want to hold that up, especially with my departure. I asked, and town council was going to try to get this review in today, and I checked my emails before I came in to this meeting and didn't have it, but said he would, if he didn't have it today, he'd have it tomorrow. And I said, could the board vote to release this with a contingency? And he said, yes, that would be up to the board, though.
I remember this coming before the planning board maybe in the 80s, and it was to do the road, I think, to finish the road. I don't remember the players, but I do remember, you know, the reason it was never developed is because it's like a cliff. It's so steep. It's very, very steep.
Yes.
So it never, if I remember right, nothing was done. Something was proposed, and then either through the planning board or town council or both. And I think town council back then was Fred Visconti. It didn't move forward. Nothing happened. So, you know, I have limited memory of this, and I think the other planning board members have, this is the first time they've seen it, is the last 5 minutes. So I would, you're mentioning taking a vote tonight. I would not want to do that. I don't think the board knows enough about it. But when we get into talking about the future agendas, we may, our next meeting is the 20th.
The next one, next Monday's a holiday, so it's Monday the 25th.
Yeah, 25th. But if, for all the planning board groupies, you'll notice that we've met outside of our usual Monday. You know, today's Thursday, we met last Thursday. And with what the town planner will be telling us about this new workload that's coming in, it could be that we'll be meeting more frequently over the next couple of weeks or months until we get a new planner. So the business about a pending closing, you know, we try to accommodate, but again, this is the first time the board's seen it, and all we're looking at is a plan with no history. So, and of course, no guidance from town council at this time. So, is that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why were the lots placed under covenant in the first place? And what does that mean?
Typically, you will put a covenant on and that means you're holding the lots, and the lots can't be conveyed until they put the infrastructure in, or they post surety. In this case, there was a covenant in place to finish that road saying lots can't be released until the road's done. Well, the road isn't being done. It hasn't been done. So that's the question. If there's a covenant in place, how do you release it if the road is not done or not going to be done?
So the covenant apparently is not recorded. But it is in place?
There was a covenant recorded in 1973. There was a plan recorded in 1968.
But yet these are privately held lots? Because they're part of something that the estate you're representing is in transaction to sell.
Correct. And they've paid taxes on them that the assessors send a bill for every year. So they're separate lots. I mean, it's
Why
not,
can't they be why can't the title transfer? I'm missing that component.
oh, we were gonna transfer it. We have a purchase and sale to sell it, but the person who checked the title for the buyer
Yeah.
said, wait a minute, there's something here. What's this thing from
But
1968?
why isn't whatever entity, I mean, in my experience, that means the title insurance won't write. And I'm just trying to figure out why
yes.
that is. Why any entity would care that they're still under covenant.
I can't answer that because they told me was, this is a title defect, and the usual way to clear this is to obtain a lot release. So I just, without having any experience in this area of law, I'm doing the estate, prepared a lot release. It's not that complicated a thing to do. And most of the time when I've run into this problem, I don't actually attend a meeting. I send it to the planning board. If they release it or they don't release it, I don't know what the thing behind the scenes. Most of the time, I've just gotten back a release. So
Yeah,
I know this is this is an old one. Most of the time, if the covenant is within the last owner and the last owner was in the last few years, that's usually when I've run into this problem. So I really can't speak to anything this old.
I mean, for my part, it would help expedite this if I could just get a brief explanation from your counterparty as to why they are, requesting this.
The buyer is
happen.
here, Mr. Zellman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you could explain.
You gotta go to the microphone. I think they both work, yeah.
Andrew Zellman of 29 Overlook Drive. I'm here because my attorney told me that there's a title defect because those lots can't be released because of the covenant you folks, not you, but whoever was here before, put on it, can't be legally released unless the planning board releases them. So I can't really, I could get them, we could go to the closing, but I may have a problem later on. Who knows? At some point, maybe my kids will have a problem later. Who knows? Because we didn't do what we're supposed to do. And there's no proof that Mara Dash, who bought them in 93,
93, right.
went through the process. So it's kind of, and the title insurance, to your question, I can get title insurance, but that's an exception to the insurance because they know about it. The title insurance company brought it up. So I was hoping, these lots are right behind my house. I was hoping just to own them. They're just right behind my house, and they're
So-
not usable. I know they're not usable. but
So
they're-
Jennifer, under covenant means the town technically
Holds
holds
Puts-
title?
right, well, no, it doesn't hold title, but puts a covenant in place that's recorded, and this is it from 19,
But what does that mean?
73.
When you say there's a covenant?
it just says that the lots cannot be conveyed.
So
And-
technically then they were never fully conveyed to the estate that's now selling them. That's what we're saying here.
No,
Well, then if that's not the case, then what's the difference? Either the estate owns it or it doesn't. If the estate owns it, they can sell it.
Not if the covenant says that they have to get the town's release first.
Okay, so the estate never should have held title in the first place?
No, I would assume that would be fine, but, I mean, that would be their choice. It's like, it's like an easement, and if you want to get the easement extinguished, you have to go to the beneficiary of the easement to get it extinguished.
And my point being, if I was buying this,
That's
I
different.
wouldn't care,
Yeah, that's different.
but
Why wouldn't you care that there's the
Because-
call on it from the town having to release these lots?
because this estate has held it for all this time, your former client, or
deceased
they
client.
lived there, they owned it. You buying it, you're buying the same thing that they owned. That's I didn't mean to belabor it this long. I was hoping to, get an understanding of what the intent is here, and
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand it too, that if the town says you're not supposed, because this was a development that never came to fruition, and on the developer, they put this covenant on that he can't release the lots without the planning board's approval, and then somehow over the course of years, it got conveyed without the planning board's approval of the covenant being released. Do I need to do it? And what about the next person down the line, if there was one in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, are they gonna have a problem? So that's the question. I'm gonna buy these lots, and they're not buildable. I know that. They're gonna, be behind my house, and that's fine. But someday, somebody may wanna do something, then what happens then?
Right, and you don't know if maybe it wasn't picked up.
Clear the title.
That's it.
Maybe it wasn't picked up in a previous title search. But anyways, basically, town council said there might have to be a revision of the covenant or some wording on the lot release. So he'll get back to us by tomorrow with that, but the board could vote, if it felt comfortable, to release it contingent on town council's approval
I mean,
or
I have
revision
no-
of the covenant or
I have no plan at
lot
this point, other
release.
than just gonna be part of my backyard, so.
And it might be a note that it's not a buildable lot.
Do we have the covenants?
You should see this folder. This has multiple covenants. It's got all kinds of, but this is the covenant from 1973.
But there are other covenants?
There are some covenants here and there through like the 1970s.
Is this the only one the title examiner picked up?
As far as I know, that's the only one the title examiner picked up.
So that's the one you want to get cleared?
Yes.
There was a second covenant for the lots that are way over in that corner.
Which wouldn't affect.
Yeah,
Right.
wouldn't affect them.
Yep, that came up later on.
Do you know who the title examiner was, just out of curiosity?
I represent the seller.
Yeah, okay.
I don't,
Phil wants to see that. I didn't know if you wanted to see that, but.
Does anyone want to take a vote tonight?
This
No.
has been the week of I'm looking at roads from the 1800s and lots of old things pop up that take hours of research.
All right, well, thank you for your time then, and once you get the information from the town council, just have someone,
We
I
should,
know Jennifer's not gonna be here,
Hillary
let
would
us
be
know.
the point of contact.
Hillary,
Should we
okay.
pencil this in on the 25th because the agendas are filling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Quick question, you're buying this as your primary residence?
oh, I live here and it lives here. It's right behind my house.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
right behind me.
you're just buying the specific,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
gotcha. So this is we're talking about your primary
It's right
residence?
Well, it's next door to my primary residence. I'm gonna live in the woods.
No, I
It's
get,
all woods.
I mean,
Yes,
it's
yes,
associated with, okay.
yes. Yeah, my neighbor had it. She passed away, so we contacted their heirs and got a hold of Mr. Jackowitz, and, they said they were willing to sell it to us, okay. But then the title examiner came up with this problem, and I don't know whether it's a big or small problem. My lawyer seems to think it's a problem. So, if it is or it isn't. All right.
Is your house one of the ones that you can see the Prudential building?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember when they were building this in the 60s, we used to drive up there and, you could see all the way into
Yeah.
Boston. I don't
Well,
know,
Paul Collins built those houses, and
yeah.
I used to go drive up there all the time, and I waited for one to go for sale, and one went for sale, and I finally got to the point where I could buy one, so I did. It was 15 years ago, so I plan on staying there.
Beautiful view.
How about if we
Yeah.
put it down for 7:45 on that day,
7:45.
on January 25th, Monday?
Okay, that's just up to,
Okay.
That's fine, thank you,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
thank you.
If you want to touch base with me tomorrow, if town council has provided.
I will,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, just quickly, I don't want to keep people. I know it's 2 weeks in a row. I just want to tell you, so you know, you can mark your agendas. February 8th is going to be the public hearing for the warrant articles. Also on that night at 7 o'clock is the major site plan review for 0 Furman Ave. The board granted an extension last year. You're only allowed to give 1 extension, so this is, you have to do a hearing for a new site plan. And then they're also requesting an extension for the special permit for the lower impact development. That's good for 2 years, so they want to extend it. So you have the solar on there. I'm sorry, not the solar, the warrant articles. Then on February 22nd is going to be the public hearing at 7 o'clock for St. Mark's Solar Project. And other items coming down the pipeline is a commercial building that's probably going to be filed this week or early next week for 6 and 8 Turnpike Road. That's a new commercial building. I forgot to mention Coatfield Lights, which is on your next meeting, January 20, what did I say it was? I'm sorry. For some reason, it's not in front of me right now. Oh, right here. January 25th at 7 o'clock. That's replacement of the Plainfield Lights. That's applicant is Southborough Recreation. And you have an A&R on there for the Curtis Mount Vickery. Do you remember that? And let's see. And then you have Kane over 55, which has been filed with the ZBA and will soon be filed with the planning board. That was the Bartolini. He had come informally before the board, wasn't going to do an over 55 at that time, but now is looking to do an over 55. And then 2 others, one other is the Chestnut Road development. I don't know when that'll be filed. And then we have had some inquiries for a potential medical marijuana facility, and I think they've begun discussions with town council because they have to get a letter from the Board of Selectmen. So we've had three medical marijuana facilities contacting us. And then just very quickly, Fuss and O'Neill has reviewed NSTAR, and I just want to reiterate the importance of reviewing, having a peer review of private projects. I know that's been under discussion the last couple of years, of the need of reviewing public versus private. And in this case, I had Fuss and O'Neill go out and review the as-built, as did Conservation, and there are some concerns about the drainage. So again, my leaving statement to the board is I don't think it matters if it's private or public, that I think you owe it to not only future people in a residential subdivision that will live there, that they're ensured that their drainage and road was built as designed and was peer reviewed by a independent peer reviewer. And the same thing with commercial projects, even if it's private or residential, you have possible drainage issues that could come up and, affect town roads or adjacent properties. So that's my last statement that I want to say to you, that peer reviews are really important. So thank you.
Any questions or comments on the planner report? Planner's report?
We'll
Great.
miss them.
Great job.
Thank you.
Glad that was taped.
You have a lot of work cut out for you, but Hillary's, you're lucky to have Hillary.
Is she back?
Hillary was back this week and next week part-time, but then she'll be back full-time. And we also have Elaine, one of our senior helpers, who's helping a few hours a week. And Elaine Yetman, yep. And then we have Lois, who helps out in the office, so. And then the last thing is you have some draft minutes from December 7th, December 21st, and then the meeting last week. So if you could review those for your next meeting and get ready to approve them.
So our next meeting is the 25th,
Questionable.
then February 8th, and then February
22nd.
22nd. Anybody around for those?
I am not for February 22nd.
January 25th, I'm questionable. Next week,
Phil, no on the 22nd, and
or 2 weeks.
What date did you say, Andrew?
The next one, January 22nd,
Okay,
25th,
25th.
I'm questionable.
Question. But Jesse and Don, you're available? And Kathy, I believe, is available, so. And no one has to recuse themselves for any of these meetings? They're not abutters or, okay.
So, okay. Mr. Mills,
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you, Mimi.